they named names today. So 4 parliamentarians and 1 advisor to David Eby. Now, I just tweeted the clip where they named the advisor David Eby, but it's also in the larger clip, I think, that we have here. Parm Baines, no shock there. He was the guy who helped amplify CCP disinformation against Kenny Chiu in his riding. He's the Liberal there. No surprise there. Mary Ng, Liberal, prominent Liberal Mary Ng. And then we've got Liberal Senator Yuen Pao Wu. Now they call him a member of the independent senators, but obviously he's selected and appointed by Justin Trudeau. And then Victor O, who is a conservative. Now the difference between the first 3 and Victor O, besides the fact that Victor O is a conservative, is that the conservatives were blowing the whistle on Victor O, like right off the get-go. They're like, something's wrong with Victor O. He's taken a bunch of sponsored travel to China. What's going on? They're trying to alert security officials, and everyone's like, what do you want us to do about it? And so that's the difference between the first 3, who the Liberals tried to keep us from finding out about, and the one conservative, when the conservatives are like, alert, alert, one of our guys is bad. Wow. So that's what came out today. So that's 4 of the 11. We still have 7 more. Plus there's an advisor named in this, an advisor to David Eby. Wouldn't the voters of British Columbia have loved to have known about that
Unbelievable.
last week?
Unbelievable.
Wouldn't you have loved to known about that he's got someone in his ear? And that came up in the Foreign Interference Commission because David, and I said to Drea at the time, sounds like David Eby doesn't want to know this information, right? Like he's sort of wondering who it is so that he can kind of keep it to himself. The guy's name is Ding Guo. He's a journalist who's an advisor to British Columbia Premier David Eby. So let's go to that first, because that's the short clip.
I'm here today to highlight some of the names and entities covered in my updated book and to pose a question. Should other Canadian journalists be examining the openly available evidence surrounding these networks? Firstly, my book recounts reporting on a 2020 tape recording provided to me, where Senator Yuen Pao Wu is heard in a 47-minute private briefing with the Canada Committee 100 Society. This group included Conservative Senator Victor O as an advisory member, along with an individual officially listed in a Chinese United Front Overseas Leaders Group. The Canada Committee 100 Society is led in Vancouver by Ding Guo, a journalist who is also an advisor to British Columbia Premier David Eby. Other journalists participating in this tape-recorded meeting with Senator Wu later supported Liberal candidate Parm Baines in 2021. Baines had told these journalists he opposed Kenny Chiu's Foreign Agent Registry Bill, describing it as an exclusionary policy. Ding Guo was also reportedly involved in the 2022 Conservative Party leadership race, alongside community leaders officially connected to Beijing's overseas influence arm, the United Front.
Sheila, right off the hopper, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm going back some 40 plus years to when I was in Ryerson Journalism School, but the idea of a journalist also serving as an advisor to a premier, conflict of interest much? Or maybe these days, now that journalists are being paid by the government, not so much. I mean, I think that's staggering just for starters.
Yes. And that same guy, as Sam Cooper notes, was involved somehow in the Conservative leadership race. But again, that's the leadership race wherein the Conservatives were like, something's fishy here. Yeah. And they called officials and they kept trying to sound alarm bells saying, things are happening that don't look, feel, and smell right. Do you think somebody could look into this? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. And so now things are coming out and people are saying, see, you conservatives too were being involved in this. And the conservatives took a completely different approach. They didn't try to sweep everything under the rug. They kept trying to tell on themselves every time something around them got contaminated by foreign interference. So it's very different. So for those who are saying, yeah, but the conservatives, yeah, but the Liberals didn't tell on themselves. In fact, Justin Trudeau testified about how best to sweep these things under the rug. They said, well, what did Justin Trudeau say? Oh, you can just say, we're not going to sign your nomination papers. And you can say, I'm actually leaving to spend more time with family. So now everybody that says I'm leaving politics to spend more time with family, I'm like, CCP. CCP every time.
Unbelievable. And Sheila, it's your original point. It's tragic, I think, that this information wasn't made available, say, 2 weeks ago before the British Columbia provincial election, that David Eby is the premier is somehow caught up in this. And it reminds me, I can't remember what the case was, but it was something about the Mounties not giving any details about somebody, I think with the Liberal Party that might be under investigation because it was during an election year. And the line was, we don't want to influence the election. But the fact that you're not making that public is influencing the election. Your thoughts?
Actually, that goes nicely to this. And I don't know if we want to show the big long clip. It's like 6 minutes long where Sam Cooper lays out all of his evidence. He even plays an audio recording of one of these CCP meetings with senators. But he does explicitly list Parm Bains, Mary Ng, Senator Yen Pao Wu, and Conservative Victor O, as well as the advisor to David Eby in that. And he's got all the proof. But moreover, to your point, independent MP, and I want to talk about why he's sitting as an independent, Kevin Vuong.
Yes.
He says exactly the same thing. He says, we must know who these people are because it compromises democracy itself by hiding these names. So maybe we can play that one, please.
Good morning. Canada's democracy has been under attack by authoritarian regimes. Chief among them is the People's Republic of China. And I'm joined today by leading experts on foreign interference, Sam Cooper, investigative journalist and author of Willful Blindness, 3rd edition, Dr. Charles Burton, senior fellow at Synopsis, and Michelle Junot Katsuya, former Asia Pacific desk chief at CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. We're here today to address a question that all Canadians have been asking. Who are the parliamentarians who have been identified in a confidential report by the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians? In their special report, paragraph 164 states that NSICOP has, quote, seen troubling intelligence that some parliamentarians are, in the words of the intelligence services, semi-witting or witting participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics, end quote. How can Canada have an election if Canadians don't know whether the people they're voting for has their best interests at heart or if they're serving a foreign master? Nearly every opposition party leader has called for the names of the parliamentarians identified in the NSICOP report, but the Trudeau government refuses to do so. This plays directly into the hands of authoritarians. Until those names are identified, a cloud of suspicion hangs over all parliamentarians, but especially those of Chinese heritage. It's time for the government to come clean to Canadians and defend our democracy. Sam.
Sheila, first of all, I have a lot of time for Kevin Vuong, even though he ran as a Liberal and now sits as an independent. He's never turned down an interview from Rebel News, unlike so many other in the political class who are actual cowards when it comes to hard-hitting questions. And, the ostensible reason why he was dropped by the Liberal Party is that he didn't reveal information about a sexual assault charge. But not only was Kevin Vuong not found guilty, Sheila,
Exactly.
the person who alleged the sex assault dropped the charges, dropped it. This is insane. I thought we were living in a society innocent until proven guilty, but there wasn't even a trial because the alleged victim dropped the charges. So I think he should have been given benefit of the doubt. So now he sits as the independent MP for Spadina, Fort York. And I think that was an absolute raw deal. So I'm happy to see him speaking out about this.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up because the raw deal is probably a Chinese hit piece on him, as it turns out. And the Liberal Party knew it. So Kevin Vuong, I've always believed, is probably in the wrong party. He's ethnically Chinese. His parents were Vietnam War refugees to Canada, came with nothing. He's Catholic. So already a minority, right? Like to be Catholic Chinese in that neck of the woods, his family was probably heavily persecuted. And to be a Catholic in the Liberal Party, you know, good luck to you there. As it turns out, or at least from a great question from Brian Passafoon from the Toronto Sun, a journalist I've got all kinds of time for in the mainstream media. He was asked about this, about how it would appear, and there were some hints, although names weren't named during the Foreign Interference Commission, that there was Chinese targeting of a Liberal MP for their outspoken stance against China. And as it turns out, it was probably Kevin Vuong that even that sexual assault charge that was dropped was most likely a Chinese operation against him because he was like the perfect candidate, right? Refugee family, military reservist, Ivy Business School. So he would have been perfect. The problem is he didn't like China. As an ethnically Chinese person, his voice actually would be a lot louder. And so it turns out that what happened to him, quite likely a CCP operation against him.